All right, welcome back to Perdido Key Gaming. I decided to take down the previous War in the Pacific Admiral Edition video that I did because the music was up and I got hit by somebody claiming copyright on the music in the background. So, although I don't get any monetization from these videos yet, I don't have viewers, likes, all that stuff that makes it happen. Um, Somebody else would be earning the ad revenue. So it was two very suspicious entities. Anyway, so I decided to redo this video without any music. Anyway, so this is one of my favorite games, video games, PC games. This is War in the Pacific Admiral Edition by Matrix Games. Highly recommended, especially if you're one of those people who likes to get in the nitty gritty of World War II and really complex games and stuff. This game starts December 7th and goes day by day. You can set it to go more days per turn if you want to, but being the kind of guy I am, I like to go day by day because it seems like it's more fun. You get to do day by day things, and plus, um, the I'm playing the Allies, the Americans, the Australians, the Dutch, the British, the Indians, the Chinese, and against Japan. Um, but the AI is a little bit sneaky, and it's an AI, so it tends to do crazy stuff. So it's better to do it by day, and uh, you know take control of the situation, as it were. Anyway, so the map spans from the West Coast, and it kind of does a simplified version of the Eastern U.S. and the Panama Canal, the UK and Canada itself, and up here it does Aden, which is in Yemen, and Abadan in Kuwait, as well as Mombasa, Kenya, Cape Town, and South America down here, the port, Falkland Islands, Port Stanley. Um, so the units involved are pretty much every unit uh, that you can imagine. The ships uh, are individually indicated, even down to PT boats, fast torpedo boats. Uh, the ground units are kind of just units. They're in divisions, regiments, battalions, companies, other units like that. You can, of course, get an idea of what they're made up of. Um, Same kind of goes with air units. The air units are in squadrons or wings or whatever, and you have a X number of the same type of aircraft assigned to each squadron. Um, but the pilots themselves are individually tracked, so pilots can become pretty good at different kind of things. So that's why you train your squadrons in certain types of missions and things like that. So the bases also, here's San Diego. The bases themselves have ports, airfields, fortifications, mines, troop capacities, and things like that. And you can set them to, stockpile supplies, stockpile fuel. All along, your factories are auto generating supply, fuels, aircraft, uh, troops and items to do replacements for your ground forces, and things like that. So, but even places that aren't built up like San Diego, or Port Hueneme, good old Fort Ord here, um, even little bitty undeveloped places like down here in the South Pacific. These places are they have indications of what kind of port capacity or air capacity they can take. Um, so you can actually land on these islands with a engineer unit and build those things up. of course, has zero port capacity, so it's probably not even worth it. But places like Suva down here, they can grow up to be pretty big airfields and fairly decent ports. Just like San Francisco is probably the biggest place you're going to find port capacity and air capacity wise. So, and you can see where it has all these factories doing light industry, heavy industry. It's got a repair shipyard, um, which has a capacity. So if your battleships or battle cruisers or carriers get torn up and you need to put them in the shipyard, you have to go to a shipyard that's actually big enough to handle the problem. Um, what else? Let's see. Um, right now I've been, December 7th. I had a pretty good. Pearl Harbor didn't go as poorly as historically for me. It's April 21st, 1942. All the old battleships are still around. They're not much use, of course, but and a number of them are still recovering from being bombed at Pearl Harbor. And some the best thing to do really is once they get most of their damage done, is ship them off to the West Coast where they can be out of the way and everything like that. Let's see. So basically, the victory conditions are just get more points until a surrender comes, either from the U.S. or the Japanese themselves. Not too much has been going on. There's a lot of activity down here in the southeastern Pacific. Um, they keep trying to run troops to Canton and invade Canton Island, which unfortunately just happens to be in the my supply lines to Australia, which is kind of on the front lines here right now. Um, Historically, the Japanese did take the Philippines, which my guys in Manila and Bataan kind of held out for a little bit longer, tying down Japanese forces. Um, but it's definitely going south for them right now. There's little or nothing these guys can these guys can do right now. And the same's probably going to go with Borneo. It's pretty much toast. There's one poor British unit sitting up here. They've taken over Kelabis for the most part. Uh, I'm having a lot of luck with Java right now. Singapore itself did not last very long. I'm kind of holding out here in Indonesia at this place called Oosthaven, um, where I moved a lot of the Indonesian and Dutch units down here, and they're holding on for dear life. They've managed to repel all sorts of problems. Batavia is not going to be for much longer, and they'll probably just steamroll down Java and take over. But it's giving me time to build up supplies and everything like that. Um, but uh, for the most part, it's a logistical nightmare. Your bases are using up supply and resources and oil and fuel in order to conduct combat operations and to build replacements for troops. And there is reinforcement schedule and everything like that, so you'll get more stuff from the East Coast, and stuff will show up in San Francisco, and eventually you can build up your as the U.S. you can build up your forces to take on that, and hopefully get a surprise attack, much like the Battle of Midway the uh, on the Japanese main carrier strike force, I believe the Kido Butai. They've showed their carriers have shown up a couple places. There's been a couple of minor skirmishes. Fortunately, all my carriers are still working. I use them untraditionally to hit invasion forces. Um, the Lexington and the Saratoga. Saratoga got beat up a little bit, but not in battle, just pure wear and tear, unfortunately. And that's one thing that will happen as your ships are out at sea. They will get wear and tear. They eventually have to go to port, and yes, you definitely wouldn't put them in the shipyard to get uh, you know, the the actual refits and stuff done, make them better units. You know, especially those old battleships. They're never going to get beyond 21 knots, but so let's see. Like I said, they are good for something. I parked because of this whole Canton thing. I parked four of them down here to just blow up transports who try to come down here. The AI will just keep throwing people at you until eventually you'll think you got them. You think you got them going, and then their carriers will show up. But anyway, I think I've got them. They're tied down doing something. They might be in doing a refit. So anyway, everything is kind of modeled. You've got operations reports which tell you what's been going on during the last turn. Um, you've got SIGINT reports which can give you some idea. You got to kind of look at it a little bit. Um, Radio transmissions detected at Raboul. Well, of course, get some idea of where units are. Sometimes you will get an indication that something's going on, like Kwajalein Island, or heavy volume of radio transmissions. Same at Tokyo. Well, duh. But you want to keep an eye on that because you might get some indication that where a carrier is, or units that are usually associated with carriers, like their heavy cruisers and fast battleships. Maybe you get some idea where they are, so you know where the carriers are. You do your industry management. You can tell in order for somebody to be producing something, they got to be in the white. So if they're in the red, like Brisbane is trying to produce heavy industry, but he's failing because there's no fuel. So that's the entire thing. You got to the logistics. You got to keep the supply lines open to Australia so you can help them make their stuff. And it's kind of just a spreadsheet thing. But same with Christchurch. Can't produce heavy industry because it's all out of fuel. So you're constantly shuttling fuel and supplies to places. Georgetown, I don't think there's any hope of you. In Indonesia, it's not gonna, or Malaysia anyway. But yeah, it's since resources are very short, you want to make sure you're prioritizing, and you kind of want to do what the Allies did in World War II. Here's Guadalcanal, for example. You definitely want to get something going on because there's certain areas where you build up the airfield and you control the area, and eventually you've got them. Anything going on in Solomon Sea or down here, you got at least control of it once you get torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and enough stuff in the area to take control of sea lanes, as it were. Same with Port Moresby, holding on for dear life, but the more stuff you get up here, you can go into Papua New Guinea to put in control. And the same, kind of same thing goes with Darwin. Darwin's on the front lines. The more you move into Timor-Leste here, the more you're going to have control of the Banda Sea and anything approaching the Timor Sea. So this becomes a prime battleground. Just like down here in the South, like down here in the South Pacific at Canton, or Southeast Pacific. You don't want, your sea lanes cut off. So, Burma, Burma is definitely something you want to watch out for because they keep the same thing here. I can see there's two cargo ships and a TB, or a torpedo boat, headed up, probably trying to land on Akyap, and these units are moving up from Rangoon trying to get in here for a straight shot into India. I reinforce Imphal, put bombers, heavy infantry, artillery and everything to hold on to Imphal. That became a huge battleground in World War II. So Burma is always big. And eventually there will be enough time and space and everything to get down here and head for Mandalay. All the while, watching out here. Yeah, it's extremely fun to do your own take on World War II, as horrible as it was, um, but that's kind of the battlegrounds right now. And of course, as the war goes on, you're going to end up going into the Pacific Ocean areas back to Wake, heading out from here into uh, Entawak and some of these islands down here, Macon Island, for example, Kwajalein, um, Ponape, and maybe bypass Truck. That was, and short term, you're looking at Tarawa. That's why Baker Island is such a hot asset because it's almost a direct line. There's no built up bases here in the Gilbert Islands except for Tarawa. So that's what you want to do is push them off of here. Amelia Earhart somewhere in here, but get back to Baker Island and get on to Tarawa, which is what you kind of want to do. Um, and that's kind of what these amphibious groups, 8th Marine Regiment, and there's an Army unit in here too, 34th Infantry Regiment. They're headed for Baker Island. Don't tell them. And the battleships will provide bombardment support. And there's at least 2 carrier groups in the area: Hornet, who just arrived in the pack, and good old Enterprise in Yorktown going in. And you can see what I was talking about as float. You get damage just from floating around. So eventually, these guys are going to have to head back up to Pearl, sit around for a couple of weeks, and get fixed up. But not for the plan is to do Baker first. Getting ready with a number of things. We got the New Zealanders, we got the Marine Corps, we've got the Navy, we've got the Army, and all these guys are going to go to Guadalcanal, Lunga, set up base there. Um, main part here is hopefully Makassar. That's probably the best place to go. Anyway, in this game, the combat is kind of it's the Japanese troops and naval ships have a high experience, a lot of experience. So in this game, the Japanese are going to win a lot. They're going to win combats a lot. So it's more, to me, it's best to just go after when you can bushwhack carriers and warships and stuff like that. But taking out their merchant ships really creates an issue with them. Um, the Japanese reinforcements are heavily dependent on how much resources they can get up to Japan. So the more you can slam them for that, the better off you are. And that's kind of why they want Java and everything, because the resource centers in Malaysia, Borneo, and Java have a lot of resources. So they try to ship it up there. You've got your submarines everywhere. Fortunately, there are enough U.S. submarines to make a difference. But the combat is kind of abstract. There's probably internal die rolls and things like that. But otherwise, you can't. There's a lot of luck involved, involving spotting units and just surprise effects and things like that. So anyway, right, I'll just say a bit on China. I kind of let China do its own thing. It's hard to keep track of where you should be going because the Japanese units, again, are very good. Chinese units are really bad. It's probably best to group all the Chinese units and, just go after them, keep going after Japanese units and try and kick them back to wherever they're going. Like here, need to just gang up on these guys, 17th division sized unit there. And the Indians, there's no reason to even mess with most of the stuff in India. They're just sitting there. But you want to move any units that belong to other theaters to where they're supposed to go. So you'll see reinforcements arrive for Burma, move them to Burma. You'll see reinforcements arrive in San Francisco. They need to go to South Pac, move them down. I always move them down to, of course, New Caledonia and Espiritu Santo here. Southwest Pacific, I moved to Darwin. In Pacific Ocean areas to Pearl Harbor. So, just building up enough forces and making plans to, go after your immediate objectives. Anyway, so that's all I got for today. Sorry I had to do a redo. I had 3 views on the old video, and that's kind of sad that I lost those, but maybe I'll generate some more this time around. But please hit like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. And definitely go to Matrix Games and look up War in the Pacific or any of their other games, really. And check it out. I think this game's been entertaining me since 2009. I think the $80 I paid for it is well worth it. $8 a year? Sure enough. All right. We'll see you tomorrow for some more Perdido.